The calculated surrender. Commander Sarah Chen watched the crystalline ships of the Archean Empire through her fighter's viewport, their prismatic hulls refracting starlight into rainbow patterns across her control panel. Her hands remained steady on the controls even as warning signals flashed across her displays. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. Sunfire 7, you are severely outnumbered. The alien voice crackled through her comm system, its artificial translation carrying traces of smugness. Power down your systems and prepare for boarding. Sarah allowed herself a small smile as she initiated her fighter's shutdown sequence. The Archeans, like most spacefaring races, assumed that humanity's greatest weakness was their fragile organic nature. Their arrogance would be their undoing. "This is Commander Chen of the Earth Defense Force," she transmitted, her voice carefully modulated to convey resignation. "I'm powering down. Please, don't shoot." The fear in her voice wasn't entirely feigned. The next few hours would determine whether humanity gained the advantage they desperately needed, or whether she died alone in the cold depths of space. The mission parameters accepted nothing less than complete success. 3 Archean boarding shuttles approached her disabled fighter, their crystalline forms resembling abstract art more than military vessels. Sarah had studied their designs extensively, noting how the aliens favored beauty over practicality in all things. It was one of many weaknesses she intended to exploit. The boarding shuttle's energy field enveloped her fighter, and Sarah felt the familiar tingle of alien tech interfacing with human systems. She fought the urge to check the subtle implant at the base of her skull, the real reason she'd been chosen for this mission. The biosynthetic mesh was undetectable to Archean scanners, designed to mimic normal human neural patterns while allowing her to interface with their systems. "Exit your vessel with hands visible," the translated voice commanded. "Any hostile action will result in immediate termination." Sarah complied, pushing herself out of the cockpit with practiced ease. In the zero gravity of space, she oriented herself toward the nearest Archean soldier. Their environment suits were works of art, like everything else they created, sweeping lines of transparent crystal strengthened by energy fields, revealing the tall, elegant forms within. The closest Archean warrior trained a weapon on her, a crystalline tube that she knew could reduce her to atoms in microseconds. She raised her hands, making sure they could see she was unarmed. Not that she needed weapons for what came next. "Scan complete," another Archean announced. "No weapons detected. Bringing prisoner aboard." The energy field shifted, pulling her toward the boarding shuttle's airlock. Sarah didn't resist, letting them believe she was just another defeated human soldier. As the airlock cycled, she took a measured breath, activating a subroutine in her neural implant. It began mapping every system it could detect, building a comprehensive model of Archean ship architecture. Inside the shuttle, 2 Archean warriors secured her with energy restraints. Up close, their alien nature was even more apparent, their crystalline armor seeming to grow from their iridescent skin, their 4-fingered hands moving with inhuman grace. "You will be transported to the prismatic citadel for interrogation," one of them informed her. "The Empire wishes to understand why humans persist in their futile resistance." Sarah lowered her head, playing the part of the defeated soldier. Let them think her capture was just another victory in their campaign against Earth. Let them believe their superiority was absolute. The truth would come soon enough. The journey to their main facility passed in calculated silence. Sarah used every moment to gather data through her implant, building a detailed map of Archean security protocols. Their technology was advanced, but it followed patterns, beautiful mathematical patterns that their species couldn't help but implement in everything they created. The prismatic citadel lived up to its name. The massive space station was a geometric marvel, its crystalline surfaces capturing and redirecting starlight in mesmerizing displays. Sarah felt a moment of genuine appreciation for its beauty, even as she noted its tactical vulnerabilities. A guard detail escorted her through pristine corridors, their boots making no sound on the transparent floors. Other Archeans they passed barely spared her a glance. Humans were beneath their notice after all. just another primitive species to be studied and subjugated. They brought her to an interrogation chamber that looked more like an art installation than a prison cell. The walls shifted with patterns of light, designed to disorient and confuse. Sarah pretended to sway, as if affected by the display. In reality, her implant was analyzing the patterns, decoding the base algorithms that governed all Archean systems. "The Inquisitor will arrive shortly," one guard announced. "Do not attempt to resist. It will only bring you pain." Sarah slumped in her restraints, giving them what they expected: a broken human, ready to reveal everything she knew. If they had any idea what she actually was, what humanity had become capable of, they would have executed her on the spot. The Inquisitor arrived with typical Archean flourish, its crystalline robes catching and refracting light in complex patterns. The alien's 4 eyes studied her with clinical detachment, its thin lips curved in what passed for a smile among its kind. "Commander Sarah Chen," it spoke, its translator producing perfect English. "Your capture is most fortunate. The Empire has many questions about human military capabilities." Sarah raised her head slowly, meeting its gaze. I'll tell you what I know. Just please, don't hurt me." The Inquisitor's smile widened. "Your cooperation is appreciated, though unnecessary. We have ways of extracting information that require no voluntary participation." It gestured, and an array of crystalline instruments descended from the ceiling. Each one caught the light differently, creating a dazzling display that masked their true purpose. Sarah knew what came next. She had studied the reports of previous captives, the few who had survived to report back. "Your species' mental architecture is primitive but surprisingly resilient," the Inquisitor continued. "Breaking it requires precision." The first probe touched her temple, and Sarah allowed herself to scream. The pain was real. There was no faking that, but it wasn't nearly as debilitating as the Archeans believed. As their devices attempted to map her neural pathways, her implant was doing the same to their systems, using their own probes as a direct connection to their network. Hours passed in a symphony of pain and pretended breakdown. Sarah fed them carefully crafted memories. Troop movements that were already outdated, defense protocols that had been changed, just enough truth to make the lies believable. All the while, her implant worked silently, compromising system after system. When they finally left her alone in her cell, Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Phase 1 was complete. The Archeans believed they had broken her, extracted everything of value. They had no idea that their most secure facility had already been compromised. As she lay on the crystalline bed, appearing to sleep, Sarah's mind raced through the facility's systems. Her implant had mapped every security protocol, every command structure, every weakness. Now she just had to wait for the right moment to exploit them. In the vast darkness of space, beyond the reach of Archean sensors, humanity's real response was already in motion. The Archeans thought they had captured a simple fighter pilot. They would soon learn that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology or their ships. It was their ability to turn an enemy's strength into a weakness. Sarah Chen closed her eyes, her smile fading to maintain her cover. The real battle hadn't even begun. Mind games. The Inquisitor's crystalline chambers pulsed with shifting patterns of light, each sequence designed to wear down the human psyche. Sarah Chen sat motionless in her restraints, her eyes fixed on a single point in space, maintaining the same position she'd held for the past 6 hours. Her stillness had begun to unnerve her guards. "Explain again why you were in Sector 7, the Inquisitor demanded, its translated voice carrying traces of frustration. This was the 12th time it had asked the same question. Sarah blinked slowly, deliberately. "I was scouting for weaknesses in your patrol patterns." The same answer she'd given 11 times before. Each repetition delivered with identical timing, identical intonation. The Inquisitor's crystalline fingers tapped against its console, creating musical notes that would normally serve to destabilize a prisoner's concentration. Sarah had matched her breathing to their rhythm hours ago. "You understand that we can detect falsehoods. The Inquisitor stated, its four eyes narrowing. Your vital signs should fluctuate when lying. Sarah allowed herself the smallest of smiles. Why would I lie about being caught doing exactly what you'd expect a human scout to do? The question hung in the air, another piece in the psychological puzzle she was constructing. While the Archons probed for military secrets, Sarah was analyzing their every response, her neural implant cataloging their behavioral patterns just as thoroughly as their technology. One of the guards shifted uncomfortably. They'd been watching her for days now, waiting for the breakdown that should have come after the neural probes. Instead, they found themselves dealing with something they didn't understand. A human who seemed to be playing by their rules while somehow making them feel like the ones being studied. Perhaps we should increase the intensity, a second Inquisitor suggested, entering the chamber. Its robes created complex interference patterns with its colleagues, a display of status that Sarah's implant immediately decoded and archived. Curious, Sarah said, her voice carrying a note of genuine interest. You only bring in additional Inquisitors when dealing with species capable of resistant metaphysical frameworks. Am I to be honored? The new arrival froze mid-step. That was classified information, knowledge that no human should possess. Sarah watched the subtle play of colors across their crystalline forms, the equivalent of shocked glances being exchanged. Your species is not known for its psychological resilience, the first Inquisitor stated, trying to regain control of the interrogation. Yet you display unusual adaptability. Sarah relaxed her posture slightly, giving the appearance of fatigue while her mind remained sharp. Perhaps you've made assumptions about humans based on incomplete data. It wouldn't be the first time your empire has underestimated a species. The reference to past failures, carefully gleaned from data her implant had extracted, caused visible distress in both Inquisitors. Their crystalline forms resonated at frequencies that betrayed their unease. You speak as if you understand our history, the second Inquisitor said, its translator barely masking the tension in its voice. I understand patterns, Sarah replied. And your empire, for all its advancement, is built on beautiful, predictable patterns. The words were calculated to provoke, and they hit their mark. The Archons prided themselves on the mathematical perfection of their society. The suggestion that this made them predictable was both insult and threat. Enough, the first Inquisitor commanded. It gestured, and new instruments descended from the ceiling. We will try more direct methods. Sarah didn't resist as they attached neural interfaces to her temples. Her implant was already interfacing with the devices, using them to dive deeper into the Archean network. The pain would be real, but it was price worth paying for the access it provided. Hours passed in a dance of agony and resistance. Sarah screamed when expected, withheld information just long enough to be believable, and slowly fed them the carefully crafted narrative that Admiral Torres had helped her construct. The Earth Defense Force is desperate, she gasped after a particularly intense session. We're trying anything we can think of to find an advantage. It was the truth, technically. Humanity was searching for advantages. They had just found them in very different places than the Archons suspected. The interrogation continued for days, following patterns that Sarah had predicted and prepared for. The Archons were masterful at breaking most species, but their methods relied on their understanding of how minds worked. They assumed all intelligent life followed certain universal principles. Sarah was proving that assumption dangerous. In her cell between sessions, she appeared to sleep while her implant processed the wealth of data it was accumulating. The Archons' security systems were intricate works of art, but they were fundamentally based on the same patterns that governed their architecture, their society, their very way of thinking. Every probe they used to access her mind became a backdoor into their networks. Every attempt to break her psychology revealed more about their own. Sarah was turning their greatest strengths, their technological sophistication and their absolute confidence in their superiority, into vulnerabilities. On the seventh day, they'd brought in a third Inquisitor. This one was different. Its crystalline form darker, its movements less graceful but more efficient. Sarah's implant identified it as a member of the rarely seen pragmatic sect, Archons who sacrificed beauty for functionality. "You are an anomaly," it stated without preamble. "Your neural patterns do not match our models of human psychology." Sarah met its gaze steadily. Models are only as good as their assumptions. Indeed, the pragmatic's four eyes studied her with unsettling intensity. "I believe we have been asking the wrong questions. The mystery is not what you know, but what you are." For the first time, Sarah felt a flicker of genuine concern. The pragmatic sect was known for seeing past the Empire's usual blind spots if they started looking too closely at her neural patterns. But she was prepared even for this. Her implant had already identified the pragmatic security clearance and was adapting its mimicry of her brain activity. Let them look closer. They would find exactly what they expected, just as they had been doing all along. "I am exactly what I appear to be," Sarah said, allowing a trace of her real exhaustion to show. "A human soldier who took a chance and failed." The pragmatic made a sound that the translator didn't bother to convert. "No, you are something else. Something new. The question is whether you represent a threat that must be eliminated or an opportunity that must be studied." Sarah felt the weight of its assessment. This was the moment of greatest risk and greatest opportunity. Everything depended on convincing the pragmatic that she was unusual enough to study, but not dangerous enough to eliminate immediately. "Your empire has existed for millennia," she said carefully. "In all that time, how often have you encountered something genuinely new?" The pragmatic's crystalline form shifted, casting shadows that her implant interpreted as interest. "Continue. Humans are adaptable. We learn, we change, we evolve. Not over millennia, but within lifetimes. Perhaps that's what your models can't account for." It was a calculated risk, offering a partial truth that might satisfy their curiosity while diverting them from the full reality. The pragmatic studied her for a long moment before turning to its colleagues. "The human will be transferred to my research facility," it declared. "Standard interrogation is clearly ineffective." Sarah allowed herself to slump in her restraints, as if resigned to more intense questioning. Inside, her mind raced with new calculations. A transfer would mean passing through less secure areas of the facility, more opportunities to access different systems, more chances to complete her true mission. As they led her back to her cell, Sarah caught a glimpse of her reflection in the crystalline walls. She looked worn, defeated, exactly how she needed to appear. The real battle was about to begin, and her greatest weapon wasn't her implant or her training, but the Archons' own certainty that they understood what they were dealing with. They had no idea that every moment spent trying to break her had only made humanity stronger. The hidden protocol. The transfer to the pragmatic sect's research facility provided Sarah with exactly what she needed: motion. As the crystalline transport vessel navigated through the prismatic citadel's lower levels, her neural implant mapped every corridor, every junction, every security checkpoint. Each scanner they passed became another point of access, each verification protocol another piece of the puzzle. The pragmatic walked beside her, its darker crystalline form a stark contrast to the luminescent beauty of the regular Archean architecture. "Your neural patterns have shifted 16 times since your capture," it stated. "Each shift subtle, each one adapting to our methods of interrogation." Sarah kept her eyes forward, maintaining the appearance of resignation. "The human mind is more flexible than you give it credit for." Perhaps. The pragmatic's translated voice carried undertones of speculation. Or perhaps there is more to your flexibility than mere biological adaptation. They passed through another security checkpoint, and Sarah felt her implant connecting with the verification systems. The Archean's security was layered like a crystalline lattice, beautiful, complex, and riddled with precisely arranged gaps. Her implant slipped through those gaps like water through a sieve, leaving behind microscopic alterations in its wake. The research facility itself was different from the rest of the Citadel. Where most Archean architecture favored sweeping curves and prismatic surfaces, this section was almost brutally geometric. Function over form, The pragmatic sect's signature. Your allies will not find you here, the pragmatic informed her as they entered a heavily shielded laboratory. This facility exists in a partial phase shift. No human sensors can detect it. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. That must be very reassuring. The pragmatic paused, studying her expression. You continue to display inappropriate confidence for a prisoner facing detailed dissection. Maybe I've just accepted my fate, Sarah suggested, even as her implant began interfacing with the laboratory's systems. The phase shift technology was fascinating. Her neural mesh was already analyzing its operational principles. Acceptance typically manifests as depression or resignation. The pragmatic noted. You display neither. It gestured to a crystalline examination chair. Perhaps we will find answers in your cellular structure. Sarah sat without resistance as restraining fields activated around her. The chair began to reconfigure, crystalline probes emerging from its surface. Each one was a marvel of engineering, designed to analyze matter at the quantum level. They were also, thanks to the alterations her implant had been making, now part of her growing network of compromised systems. Your biology appears standard at first glance, the pragmatic observed, studying readings that Sarah could now see through her neural interface. Yet there are anomalies in your neural activity that defy explanation. The human brain is still largely a mystery, even to us, Sarah offered. It wasn't even a lie. Human consciousness was indeed poorly understood. The fact that humanity had learned to augment that consciousness was something else entirely. The pragmatic initiated a deeper scan, and Sarah felt the familiar tingle of alien technology attempting to map her neural pathways. Her implant responded automatically, providing false readings that matched expected human patterns while using the connection to push deeper into the facility's network. Your cellular decay rate is inconsistent, the pragmatic noted, as if your body is both aging normally and not aging at all. Sarah remained silent. This was the dangerous part, the moment when the pragmatic might realize what it was actually seeing. Everything depended on keeping it focused on the biological puzzle while her implant completed its work. Fascinating, the pragmatic murmured, adjusting the scanners. Your quantum signature shows signs of temporal interference, yet we detected no technology capable of such effects. That's because you're looking for technology you understand, Sarah thought. The neural mesh wasn't just a computer interface. It was a new form of consciousness, one that operated on principles the Archons hadn't yet discovered. Hours passed as the pragmatic conducted its analysis. Sarah endured scan after scan, each one providing her implant with more access, more control. The facility's systems were becoming an extension of her augmented consciousness, though she carefully masked any sign of this integration. Your species continues to surprise us, the pragmatic said finally, stepping back from its instruments. We believe humans to be primitive, relying on brute force and crude technology. Yet here you are, demonstrating capabilities we barely understand. Maybe that's why we're still fighting, Sarah suggested, because you keep underestimating what humans can become. The pragmatic's crystalline form shifted, casting complex shadows. Perhaps you are simply an aberration, a mutation that must be studied and understood before it can spread. Sarah felt the examination chair's restraints tighten. New probes emerge, these designed for more invasive analysis. Her implant registered their approach and began making final adjustments to the facility's systems. Your cellular structure suggests extensive modification, the pragmatic continued. Yet we detect no sign of artificial enhancement. How is this possible? Sarah met its four-eyed gaze steadily. Maybe you're asking the wrong questions. Instead of how it's possible, maybe you should ask why you can't detect it. The pragmatic went still. Sarah could see the moment when understanding began to dawn, when it finally realized that its inability to detect artificial enhancement might indicate technology beyond its comprehension. But it was too late. Sarah's implant had reached critical mass in its infiltration of the facility's systems. With a thought, she deactivated the restraining fields. The Pragmatic reached for an alarm control, but found its own security protocols turned against it. Impossible, it stated, watching as every system in the laboratory responded to Sarah's neural commands. Our technology is not compatible with human neural architecture. Sarah stood, rolling her shoulders to release the tension of hours of examination. You're right. It's not compatible with human neural architecture, but I'm not entirely human anymore. None of us are. The truth clicked into place in the Pragmatic's mind. The temporal interference. You've quantum entangled your consciousness with your technology. Close enough, Sarah acknowledged. Humanity didn't try to mash your technology. We evolved past it. Through her neural mesh, Sarah could feel the facility's systems bending to her will. Security protocols rewrote themselves. Communication channels realigned, and deep in the Citadel's core, critical systems began preparing for commands they were never designed to execute. The Pragmatic made no move to stop her, its scientific curiosity apparently overriding even its loyalty to the Empire. You allowed yourself to be captured, it realized. This entire sequence of events was planned. Not exactly planned, Sarah corrected, accessing the facility's primary control networks. We knew the opportunity would come. We just had to be ready to exploit it when it did. Ready how? The Pragmatic asked, even as emergency alerts began flashing through the facility's networks. Sarah smiled, and this time there was nothing artificial about it. By becoming something your empire never expected. You thought you were studying me, but humanity has been studying you for years. Every prisoner you took, every mind you probed, every system you accessed. We were learning, adapting, evolving. Through her neural mesh, Sarah sent the signal that would begin the next phase of humanity's response. Throughout the prismatic citadel, systems began to fail in carefully orchestrated patterns. The hidden protocol was now active, and the real battle was about to begin. Humanity's response. Admiral Marcus Torres stood on the bridge of the EDF Hyperion, watching the tactical display as hundreds of human ships emerged from quantum space. Each vessel was a testament to humanity's adaptation. Designs that appeared crude and primitive to Arcan sensors, while hiding technology that operated on principles the Empire couldn't detect. Commander Chen's signal is steady, his tactical officer reported. She's compromised approximately 60% of the prismatic citadel systems. Marcus nodded, his dark eyes fixed on the crystalline structure looming before them. Begin Phase 2. Let's show the Empire what humanity has become. Inside the citadel, Sarah Chen moved through the corridors with purpose, her neural mesh now fully integrated with the facility's network. Emergency alerts flashed through the crystalline walls, creating patterns of light that her augmented consciousness translated instantly into data streams. The Pragmatic followed her, its scientific curiosity apparently overriding its loyalty to the Empire. Your control of our systems should not be possible, it stated, watching as security barriers parted before them. The mathematical principles are incompatible. That's because you're thinking in terms of mathematics, Sarah replied, her mind simultaneously coordinating with the approaching human fleet. We learned to think in terms of possibility. Through her neural interface, she could sense the Arcan defenders rushing to battle stations, their crystalline ships moving to intercept the human fleet. They were following standard Imperial doctrine, arranging themselves in mathematically perfect formations designed to maximize their advanced shields and weapons. It was exactly what humanity had anticipated. Multiple quantum signatures detected. An Arcan commander's voice echoed through the facility's comm system. Human vessels approaching in attack formation. Sarah allowed herself a small smile as she accessed another layer of the Citadel's defense network. The Arcans were about to learn that their understanding of attack formation was hopelessly outdated. The human fleet split apart, each ship seemingly moving at random. To the Arcans, it appeared chaotic, undisciplined. Exactly what they expected from primitive humans. Their tactical computers struggled to predict movement patterns that deliberately defied mathematical logic. Your ships are sacrificing tactical cohesion, the Pragmatic observed, studying the security display that showed the battle unfolding. This reduces their combat effectiveness by approximately 73%. According to whose calculations? Sarah asked, even as she used her neural mesh to deactivate another section of the Citadel's defenses. Yours or ours? The answer came in the form of devastation. The seemingly random movements of the human ships suddenly revealed their true purpose. Each vessel had maneuvered to a precise position, creating a complex web of quantum-entangled fields. Energy surged between them in patterns that the Archon sensors couldn't track. The crystalline ships of the Empire found their perfect formations working against them. The mathematical precision of their positioning became a liability as the human fleet's quantum web caused localized distortions in spacetime. Archean weapons fire bent around human ships, their own perfect calculations ensuring they missed their targets. Impossible, the tactical officer's voice crackled through the comm. Their ships are operating outside normal spacetime parameters. Sarah accessed the Citadel's main command center through her neural mesh, watching as the Archean leadership struggled to comprehend what they were facing. Their tactical displays showed impossible readings. Human ships existing in multiple quantum states simultaneously, weapons fire that seemed to originate from positions the ships had occupied seconds ago or would occupy seconds later. You've weaponized quantum uncertainty, the pragmatic realized, its crystalline form resonating with what might have been admiration. Your fleet exists in a state of temporal flux. Among other things, Sarah acknowledged, her consciousness extended through the facility's networks. Humanity stopped trying to match your technology. We found ways around it instead. Through her neural interface, she could sense Admiral Torres coordinating the fleet's movements. Each ship's quantum state was entangled with her own consciousness, creating a battle network that operated on principles the Archons couldn't detect, let alone counter. The Citadel's defenders were falling back, their perfect formations shattered by attacks that seemed to violate the laws of physics. But Sarah knew the real battle was just beginning. Multiple breaches detected in the outer defense grid. An Archon commander reported, his translated voice tight with strain. Enemy ships they're everywhere and nowhere at once. Sarah accessed the facility's primary power core, her neural mesh interfacing with systems that the Archons had considered impregnable. That's the problem with believing in absolute mathematical perfection, she told the pragmatic. It blinds you to other possibilities. The Citadel's crystalline walls began to pulse with new patterns as Sarah's commands propagated through its networks. Emergency containment fields activated and deactivated in seemingly random sequences, trapping Archon defenders in their own security systems. Your neural pattern, the pragmatic said suddenly, its four eyes widening. It's not just controlling our systems, it's rewriting them at the quantum level. Sarah nodded, her consciousness spread across the facility's network. Humanity learned to interface with technology in ways you never imagined. We don't just use tools, we evolve with them. Through the facility's sensors, she watched as the human fleet executed another impossible maneuver. Ships phased in and out of normal space, their quantum-entangled states making them virtually impossible to target. The Archon defenders found their own sophisticated targeting systems working against them, their computers unable to lock onto vessels that existed in multiple states simultaneously. Admiral Torres sends his regards, Sarah transmitted through the Citadel's comm system, her voice reaching every crystalline chamber and corridor. The Empire's mathematical perfection ends today. The response was immediate and fierce. Archean warriors converged on her position, their crystalline weapons humming with deadly energy. But Sarah had already compromised their security protocols. Force fields activated between them, transforming the corridors into a maze that operated according to human logic rather than Archean mathematics. Your species was deemed primitive, the pragmatic stated, watching as Sarah systematically dismantled the Empire's most secure facility, incapable of achieving this level of technological sophistication. How did we miscalculate so badly? Sarah's hands danced across a crystalline console, her neural mesh translating her thoughts directly into system commands. You assumed that advancement meant following your path. Humanity chose to make its own. Outside, the battle reached its crescendo. The human fleet's quantum web had completely enveloped the Citadel, creating a sphere of temporal distortion that the Archean ships couldn't penetrate. Their crystalline vessels, for all their beauty and power, were unable to cope with weapons that operated outside their understanding of physical law. The facility is lost, an Archean commander's voice announced, resignation evident even through the translator. All personnel, initiate emergency protocols. But Sarah had anticipated this too. Her neural mesh had already locked out the emergency systems, preventing the Archeans from scuttling their own facility. The Empire's greatest stronghold was now effectively under human control. Through it all, the pragmatic watched with an air of scientific fascination. "You have done more than defeat us," it observed. "You have rendered our entire technological philosophy obsolete." Sarah turned to face the alien scientist, her consciousness still spread throughout the facility's networks. "No," she corrected. "We've shown you that there's more than one path to advancement. The question is whether your empire can adapt to that reality." The battle was won, but Sarah knew this was only the beginning. Humanity had revealed its true capabilities, and the galaxy would never be the same. Victory's price. The prismatic Citadel's central command chamber was a marvel of crystalline engineering, its walls displaying real-time data from across the facility in shifting patterns of light. Sarah Chen stood at its heart. Her consciousness merged with the facility's networks through her neural mesh. Admiral Torres' holographic form hovered before her, projected through systems that now responded to human commands. "The Empire's Council is requesting terms," Torres reported, his expression grave. "The fall of the Citadel has shattered their sense of invulnerability." "And their fleet?" Sarah asked, though her neural mesh had already provided the answer. "Retreating to regroup. They still don't fully understand what they're facing." Torres' hologram flickered as he studied a tactical display. "The quantum web is holding. They can't approach without their ships phasing out of normal spacetime." The pragmatic, still observing from nearby, shifted its crystalline form. "Your victory extends beyond the military sphere," it noted. "You have invalidated the fundamental principles upon which our civilization is built." Sarah nodded, feeling the weight of that truth through her connection to the facility systems. Every database, every archive, every piece of Archean technology now laid bare before humanity's new understanding of reality. That was always the real objective. Through her neural mesh, she could sense the ripples of their victory spreading across the Empire's quantum communication network. The Archeans' perfectly ordered society was facing something they had never anticipated: the need to completely reevaluate their place in the universe. "We're detecting unusual energy signatures from the Empire's core worlds," Torres reported, his hologram showing new tactical data. "They're attempting to adapt their technology to counter our quantum manipulation." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. "Let them try. They're still thinking in terms of mathematical perfection. They don't understand that we've moved beyond that limitation." The pragmatic moved closer to one of the chamber's displays, its 4 eyes studying the cascading data. "Your species has achieved something unprecedented," it said. "You've not merely advanced along the technological spectrum, you've stepped outside it entirely." "Because we had to," Sarah replied, her consciousness simultaneously monitoring hundreds of systems throughout the captured facility. "The Empire's technological superiority forced us to find another path." Through the facility's long-range sensors, she could see the effects of their victory rippling across space. The quantum web generated by the human fleet had created a new kind of territory. Regions where the Empire's perfect mathematics held no power, where their crystalline ships could not safely operate. Admiral Torres' hologram shifted, showing new tactical overlays. "The Council is becoming more insistent about negotiations. They're offering significant concessions." "Of course they are," Sarah said, her neural mesh processing the diplomatic communications flooding through the captured networks. They think they can buy time to understand and counter our technology. The pragmatic's crystalline form resonated with what might have been amusement. They will fail. One cannot counter that which operates outside one's framework of understanding. Sarah turned to face the alien scientist, her augmented consciousness still spread throughout the facility's systems. That's why you are still here, isn't it? You understand what this really means for your civilization. Indeed. The pragmatic gestured at the surrounding displays. The Empire has always advanced through perfect iteration of known principles. You have demonstrated that true advancement requires stepping into the unknown. Through her neural interface, Sarah could sense the growing chaos in the Empire's command structure. Their perfectly ordered military hierarchy was struggling to cope with a defeat that defied their understanding of reality itself. "Commander," Torres' hologram interrupted, "we're detecting massive energy buildups in the surrounding sector. The Empire appears to be mobilizing its entire fleet." Sarah nodded, having already detected this through her connection to the facility's long-range sensors. "Let them come. Every ship they send will face the same impossible choice: retreat or cease to exist in normal spacetime." The pragmatic moved to another display, studying the tactical data. "They will not retreat," it stated with certainty. "The Empire's doctrine does not allow for strategic withdrawal." "We know," Sarah replied, her fingers dancing across a crystalline console as her neural mesh initiated new protocols throughout the facility. "That's what we're counting on." Through the facility's communication network, she broadcast a message to the approaching Imperial fleet. Her words, translated into the Empire's language, carried a weight that no human communication had ever held before. "Your mathematics is perfect," she transmitted. "Your technology is flawless, and that is why you cannot win. Humanity doesn't seek perfection. We embrace the chaos of evolution itself." The response was immediate and massive. Thousands of crystalline ships emerged from quantum space, their formation's mathematical perfection given form. The Empire had committed its full strength, determined to crush this threat to their technological supremacy. Sarah felt Admiral Torres' fleet responding through the quantum web, their ships shifting into impossible configurations that defied the Empire's understanding of physics. The space around the Citadel became a battlefield where the laws of reality themselves seemed to bend and break. "They still don't understand," the pragmatic observed, watching as Imperial ships tried to penetrate the quantum web. "They believe this is merely a superior technology that can be analyzed and countered." "It's not technology," Sarah corrected, her consciousness guiding the defense of the captured facility. "It's evolution. Humanity has become something new, not by design, but by necessity." Through her neural mesh, she could feel the strain on the Imperial ships as they encountered the quantum distortions. Their perfect formations began to break apart as vessels phased partially out of normal spacetime, their crews experiencing reality in ways their minds couldn't process. "Admiral," Sarah called through their quantum-entangled communication, "initiate the final phase." Torres' hologram nodded grimly. The human fleet's formation shifted again, creating new patterns in the quantum web. Space itself seemed to fold around the Imperial ships, trapping them in regions where multiple realities overlapped. The Empire's perfect mathematics, their flawless technology, became their undoing. Their ships, designed to operate with absolute precision, couldn't function in space that no longer followed their understood laws of physics. "You have not merely defeated the Empire," the pragmatic stated, watching as the mighty Imperial fleet fell into chaos. "You have forced us to confront the limitations of our own perception of reality." Sarah nodded. Her consciousness extended through systems that now operated according to principles the Empire had never imagined. That was always the goal, not to destroy the Empire, but to make it evolve. Through the facility's communications network, she could hear the panic in the Imperial commanders' voices as they faced an enemy that didn't play by their rules. The Empire's military doctrine, based on perfect mathematical models, had no answer for humanity's quantum evolution. "The Council is surrendering," Torres reported, his hologram showing new diplomatic signals. They're requesting immediate cessation of quantum distortion effects. Sarah's hands moved across the crystalline controls, her neural mesh translating thought into action. The quantum web began to stabilize, allowing the Imperial ships to return to normal spacetime. But the damage was done. The Empire's belief in its technological superiority had been shattered. Your victory is complete, the pragmatic acknowledge, but its implications will reshape the galaxy. Sarah turned to face the alien scientist, her augmented consciousness still sensing the ripples of change spreading across space. That's what evolution does, she said softly. It forces us to become something new, ready or not. The price of victory had been high, not in lives or ships, but in the fundamental change it had brought to both humanity and the Empire. There would be no returning to the old order, no retreat to comfortable certainties. Humanity had shown the galaxy a new path forward, one that embraced uncertainty and change itself as the engines of advancement. The real challenge would be helping the Empire understand that their defeat was also an opportunity, a chance to step beyond the limitations of perfect mathematics into a universe of infinite possibility. As Sarah Chen stood in the captured heart of the Empire's greatest stronghold, she knew that the real work was just beginning. Humanity had evolved to meet this challenge, but now they had to help the rest of the galaxy evolve with them. The price of victory was transformation itself.